So here we are, episode 1 of the Liberty Room.
I'm smiling like an idiot already.
we're pretty excited if you can't tell. So I'm Mike Walls. Hopefully some of you guys know me. This is Mike Bendit.
No one knows me.
No one.
Okay.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure some of you do. Now we do have another member of the team. He's off camera. He's our studio engineer, Stephen Forse. He's actually the guy who provided the equipment. He's spinning the ones and twos, making sure we sound great and that I don't look too fat on camera.
Big shout out to Stephen.
Huge shout out.
Without the technical side of it, again, we'd just be two putzes talking to our iPhone. So
Yeah.
big shout out, big thanks to Stephen
Indeed.
for what he's doing, because without it, we wouldn't even have this, obviously.
So we're thrilled. We're thrilled to be kicking this thing off. I know we've teased it a few times. But I wanted to share just a little bit of backstory, right? Peel the curtain back just a tad right off the bat. These things don't happen in a vacuum. These things don't happen by happenstance. It's Mike's brainchild. And I'd like for him to explain a little bit about how we came to be sitting here in front of you today.
My original plan was to have my own show without you.
I'm out.
I figured it would be boring with just one person, and I want to have a creative outlet where we can talk about things that interest us that you don't get on social media. You know, you get on Facebook, you get on whatever platform you're on, you spin off a tweet or a post, and it goes out into the ether, and there's no creativity in that. Anyone can copy and paste. Anyone can plagiarize or lift things they've heard and pass them off as their own. But when you get into a situation where you're in front of a camera, you're recording it, people can listen to it over and over again, hopefully, you can't be fake. You can't plagiarize. You have to be real. You have to be coming from, people have to believe that you actually believe what you're saying. And so I wanted to do something where, as we talked about before,
Not the cliche keyboard warrior just banging away from mom's basement.
And I've said it before, I work in accounting. It's so boring. And it sucks the soul right out of me. And so I wanted an outlet to where I could share an experience with someone that, we've only met a few times in person.
Right.
But, we seem to interact well and have a good rapport. And I liked the fact that you're so passionate about a topic that I'm passionate about, but my whole world doesn't revolve around it. And I know that yours doesn't, I know that's not the axis that your whole planet spins around, but you're so passionate about libertarianism and freedom and just everything having to do with that, which we could sit here and we could rattle off 100 topics, right, and get nowhere. And so I wanted to be able to drill down every time we have this show about a topic or two or three, and then that way people can interact with us on social media, give us their opinions, ask us what they want to hear. I just want to interact better. Yeah. We talked about it before, with your Facebook posts. They're really good. They're well thought out. You compose this meaningful, this thoughtful post where you lay out point after point after point of the things that you believe, and people read 3 or 4 words of it and they go down this rabbit hole of name calling. And so I thought that if you had the ability to be live, be on camera, you'd be able to get your message across, which I think more people need to hear, especially young people, because they are, if you're somebody that's 50 or 60 years old, the likelihood of us changing your opinion is, what do you think that is?
Yeah, it's not good.
Slim, 0. But somebody that is young and impressionable, the ability for us to influence them we don't want to say to think like we do, but to at least to start to look into these other things that they're not taught in school, I think is going to be really beneficial to people. And that's at the end of the day, I want to help people and not be condescending about where I've come from, but allow someone like yourself who has a lot of knowledge to give that knowledge.
Yeah, perfect. So to dovetail off of that, I think it's important that we understand, the audience at least understands that we don't come up with these ideas in a vacuum, right? They don't just, dawn on us. There's some underlying
I mean, I would like to think that some of my thoughts are divine.
Or, yeah, I'm sure you would.
They do come to me from a vision, whether it's aliens or whatever.
Yeah, it's alien.
They bring it to me and say, hey, here you go, baby.
That's what it is.
There you go. It's divine.
This is what happens when you start this early. No, but there's definitely some underlying philosophies.
Sure, of course.
You and I have talked before off camera that we've read a lot. We have, and quite frankly, this baseline of knowledge of this philosophy that we both kind of come from, it helps us in our daily lives, right? In my business, at work, with my family, when I watch the news. It's easy to make these decisions when you have a philosophy that you truly believe in. And I think that's, for me, the point of this endeavor is to share with other people, these philosophies of libertarianism, of Austrian or Chicago School of Economics, topics that we'll obviously get into later, but that ground us and help us make these daily life decisions. At the end of the day, we're both rooted in individual freedoms, individual responsibilities, and liberty, right?
Absolutely.
We both believe that we are personally responsible for our lives and that we are individually the most capable of making decisions for ourselves.
Certainly. And circling back to my original thought process of how we could put this together, I saw you being a great counterpart in that I've had my own businesses before, so I've lived that experience that you live now, but I'm coming from a standpoint of I work for somebody, right? I work for a company, and you have a business that you own, and so you cannot separate your philosophy from the way you run your business.
Right.
And I think that is really, really important for people to understand, is that there are real world ways to apply your philosophy, your philosophical, educational. There are ways to apply those things to the real world, because you cannot, there's a topic of, say, minimum wage, which is a big thing right now, right? That is something that if you had the philosophy that politicians have, you would go out of business, right?
It's ruinous, yeah.
You would ruin yourself. So you have to apply some common sense, which, does it exist anymore? That's another topic for a whole show. But you have to apply some real world experiences, and then you have to take your philosophical points of view, and you have to meld those two together. And I feel like that is what is missing from education today, is actual real world experience when it comes to how young people consume information and consume knowledge. And having someone like yourself, that you can have all these different points of view that you you've come up with over so many years. I remember we talked about your grandfather and your dad, which I thought was really interesting because everything that I've learned has kind of been, I didn't have somebody like that, which I thought that was really interesting, that you actually had someone that you were very close to kind of guide you and teach you those things, but you had to go out and experience that for yourself. You couldn't just take what they said,
right?
Because it's kind of the most common thing when you're young is anything your parents or your grandparents tell you, you kind of say, well, they don't know what they're talking about.
Right.
They're old. They don't know. But you actually had that. So I found that interesting. Talk about that a little bit, about where some of that came from, because I found it pretty fascinating that you had that experience, because it's not something I had growing up.
Yeah, so, I grew up in a conservative community. My parents were, Republicans, but they weren't, necessarily political. We didn't talk a lot about politics at home.
They're not your check pants country club Republicans.
No, not at all. We're, lower middle class, working family. But the community was pretty conservative,
right.
As you all know. And, but so my grandfather, was quite active, very, very, very smart man. He was a Rhodes Scholar, was in the Army during World War II, and one of the most brilliant men I've ever known. And from a young age, I didn't know it at the time that he was teaching me, these philosophies and these fundamentals, but that's what he was doing. But he would always quiz me and question me, and then share this information and make me think, right? Why does the world work the way it does? And as I got a little bit older, I started understanding that, he was a big believer in Ron Paul, supported those ideas. He was a voracious consumer of Austrian economics, Ludwig von Mises, also Chicago, Murray Rothbard, Hayek, Milton Friedman. The list goes on. As far as some
which
of
in his
these,
day and time was not the norm.
Certainly not the norm.
No, as a matter of fact, they were the fringe.
Right.
And in most cases, everything fringe that they were talking about has been, really, if you look at it, implemented over the last 30 to 40 years.
Yeah.
And so I find that really fascinating that you had that background. So I'm sorry to interrupt you. Keep going.
No. And he was, he worked at Dow Chemical.
Right.
He worked as a chemist. Nothing spectacular in terms of, wasn't a great businessman or anything like that, but he was a true intellectual. And what he realized is, in order to be free, in order to have rights, in order to live as our Creator intended, there were certain rules, there were certain philosophies that had to be adhered to.
Right. And what were those?
So,
or how did he define those?
Yeah, well, he was the one who first taught me the term libertarian.
Okay.
And I think it's important to understand that libertarian is a political party, but it's also a philosophy.
Sure.
Just like Democrats are a political party, but the philosophy may be called liberalism,
right,
or progressive.
Sure.
Republican is a political party, but you might call them conservative as their philosophy. So when we talk about libertarian or libertarianism, I think it's important that we denote that if we're talking big L libertarian,
which is
that's a party,
right?
But if we're talking small L libertarian, that's the philosophy.
Okay.
Not all small L libertarians are big L libertarians.
And there's a good mixture. If you look at Democrats, Republicans, they tend to, if you ever really dig into what they're saying, a lot of what they believe kind of flows through the small L libertarianism.
Sure.
And now, do they put that into practice? Not necessarily. But I think that having that background that you have definitely. So, for example, how do you put that to your kids?
Yeah,
if they'll listen.
Yeah, no, I think it starts day one with the kids. It's also the same with my employees, right?
Okay. So you even go a step further. You try to which I thought was interesting, which we talked about previously, that you actually try to tell the people that you employ not how to think or what to believe, but you really try to get them to think for themselves in a way. So talk about that a little bit, because I find that fascinating, because I employed people, and I never tried to I didn't try to tell them anything other than to do their jobs, which, good or bad, indifferent, it's just a style of management, right? Yeah. But I find that fascinating that you actually go that extra step, because in a way it is what this podcast is about. It's trying to help people. It's trying to teach people without being a teacher, so to speak, because you're not standing there in front of them. It's not like, I can't imagine at your home healthcare business how you have 10 minutes every morning of Mike's talk.
Yeah, it really doesn't work like that.
No, but I mean, how do you do it with people that work for you?
Yeah.
Because that there's a power dynamic there, right? You sign their paycheck. Well, they're going to say whatever the hell you want them to say if it means they think that they're going to get paid more, or they're going to get paid less if they don't. So how do you really get to that with the people that work for you? Because I find that fascinating.
Yeah, I think it's less in what I say and more it's less about talking the talk, and it's about walking.
So
the
you
walk.
lead by example.
Yeah, exactly, and the same thing with the kids, right? So from day one, this is the world in which they've been raised in my household is ultimate freedom, right? Nothing is taboo in my house, right? We talk about drugs. We talk about gays, lesbians, transvestites, the abortion.
Transgender.
Yeah, excuse me. Transgender. We talk about all these things and things that a lot of people would consider, politically incorrect, or maybe not topics that children should be introduced to. And I say bullshit to that, right? I mean,
sure, of course. This
is the world in which we live in. And as our parents told us, the world isn't fair, right? And we can't make it fair. It's going to eat us alive if we try to do that. So we have to, for me, it was, how do I better understand the human condition? And then there's the greed part about it, right? I want to better my life. So the more I understand how humans make decisions, the better I can succeed in negotiating with them to create outcomes that benefit us all, right? And I don't want to get too deep into, we have a lot of episodes coming, I hope, so I don't want to get too deep into the weeds here, but having these basic economic and political philosophies guiding how I do things, I feel is what's made me successful. I'm happy as a person. I feel like I'm successful as an entrepreneur. My children are fantastic. They're well-adjusted. They're high achievers. And I think a lot of that has to do with these philosophies that I hold dear. So,
and that's another way that I hope that not to use the phrase trickle down, but the way that our show ends up affecting people, because a lot of our, hopefully, future listeners and current listeners, they have the same problems that we have, right? They have families, they have jobs, some of them own businesses, and they need, whether they realize it or not, even if it's just by osmosis, they need some of that guidance. And so to be able to have that perspective, I think it's very important, and it's one of the reasons why, again, kind of circling way back to the beginning of, why did you want to do this? Well, it's hard to just spill it out. And we're gonna keep talking about why we wanted to do this. And I think it's going to be kind of a running theme of our show, is that what we boil it down to is, we want to help people be free. And everyone is going to define freedom maybe slightly differently, right? And we're not here to define freedom for everyone, but we're here to say these are the conditions that are best suited for freedom. And if you look, my perspective is, you take an arc of history, right? And you say, well, in all of history, of human recorded history, at what points was there political, personal, economic, and religious freedom? In what period of time did all of those, which I don't know what others facet of freedom there is. To me, those are kind of the big four.
Mm-hmm.
Like when at one point in history were all four of those things present? And it kind of goes back to what you're saying about the human condition. The human condition is suffering, essentially. If you really look at all of history, it's disease, it's famine, it's war, and oppression, whether it's top-down political or just from oppressive companies that exploited people for their labor, like it's going on right now. I mean, even in 2021, the bulk of humanity is not free.
Right.
So that's one of the things that I really want to talk about in a future show is, at what point in history have all four of those conditions of freedom existed?
Yeah.
And I think it's the exception and not the rule. And I believe that once our viewers kind of get exposed to that, maybe there's going to be a little bit, what I would like to do is influence people to kind of change their thought process about how they perceive freedoms and really start to appreciate them. Because if you don't want to wear, let's just take a mask, for example. There's medical, there's scientific data that one side or the other of the masks. But if you don't want to wear one, shouldn't you have the freedom to not wear a mask?
Right.
And are you infringing on someone else's freedom when you don't wear a mask? Because that other person may not want to breathe again, scientifically, they may not want to be around you if you don't.
Well, and we all have an answer to that, right? It may be an emotional response to that. It may be a philosophical. And I think what we're both getting at here is that's a very, very simple decision to make if you approach it from this philosophical standpoint, where you can, from a logical standpoint, right? And I'm not going to give you my answer to that. I think a lot of you know my answer to that, probably Mike's. But the reality is, when you have a root philosophy based in individual responsibility and individual freedom, questions like that are easily answered.
Sure.
And you can take a lot of the emotion out of it. And I think we agree, and I think a lot of the people who might be listening would agree that there's too much emotion that's driving policy today, right? Sure. I think most of us would agree that our politicians probably are not working in our best interest, that they're not paying attention to the unintended consequences of their actions. I mean, I think Republican, Democrat, from all walks of life, I think we can all agree that the United States of America is extremely special.
Sure.
That we are an incredibly unique experiment, an experiment based upon certain fundamental rights, and that the people who are running the show right now are not doing a very good job of it.
I would agree with that statement.
Right. So the question then, of course, is how do we deal with that? And then I think long term, right? Can we really affect change?
That's the goal of what I think of this show is, even if it's just one person that we get to light bulb to come on and say, wow, when did we really have all four of those areas of freedom? Mm-hmm. Is it today? Do we have those political, economic, social, and religious freedom? I would say you could rate each one of those on a percentage, right? Do we have 100% of each one of those? No. Is it utopia? Yeah, probably. It is to say that you're going to have 100% freedom to do whatever you want in any one of those four areas. But I think the necessary maintenance to maintain a free society, there's a certain few elements that are necessary that you have to adhere to. And like what you're talking about, personal responsibility, a self-denying principle. You're a business owner. If you want to go out and spend the money that your company brings in on a $1 million home, you're free to do. Can you please? You're free to do that, but what consequence is that choice going to have for you? And that's kind of the thing that I think that if we can kind of get people to start to ask those questions just even a few times, because our lives are so busy. You have a stack of, for most people, you have a stack of bills that come in every month. You work your 40, you work your overtime, whatever it is that you have to do to get all those.
Kids, soccer, baseball.
Got all these different things. And that was, again, I keep kind of going back to why I wanted to do this show. It's to try to give people an outlet, even just myself, to try to appreciate and take, whether it's an hour or 50 minutes, however long our shows end up being, to take that time and think about, well, how can I exercise my freedoms? How can I enhance my freedoms? And not in a way to just be able to do whatever it is you want to do. Yeah, I want to sit on a beach all day and drink 1792 because it's pretty damn good.
Not a bad way to go.
You know, but you're not going to get there without first denying yourself something.
Yeah.
You're not going to get there without being personally responsible, short of, you know, grandma or grandpa dies or daddy or mommy dies and leaves you this massive fortune that they worked their ass off to get.
Yeah.
Or, you know, however many generations ago worked their asses off to get it so that you can just go sit on a beach. Well, in the real world, for the overwhelming majority of people, we have to do something to get there, right? And so I look up to anybody that's in business for themselves, because I did it for about 12 years, and it was difficult. It was never easy. And anybody to me that does that, automatically they're just a little bit higher level than the person that, I'm not saying settles and goes and works for somebody, because I do it myself, so I'd be a hypocrite to say otherwise. But I do admire people that take that leap, because you're taking a chance. You're taking a huge risk. You're risking everything every single day.
Well, it's a different side of the coin too, right? I mean, it's something, you know, I don't know, right, wrong, you know, better, worse, I don't think is really matters at the end of the day. But there certainly is. It certainly is a different perspective, right? I think we can agree with that, and I hope you guys agree. I mean, that's again episode 1, right? We're fleshing it out, we're feeling it out. We have a lot of topics, we have a lot of things that we want to discuss. We're going to get into philosophical discussions. We plan on having guests. Just so you know, we plan on this being a weekly podcast. We covet your questions, your ideas. Absolutely. This isn't just the Mike and Mike show here. You know, we have what?
No.
No, it is. Oh,
this is the.
Back it up.
This is the Mike and Mike show.
Let me just go ahead and.
You're not that important, listener.
Go ahead and. Yeah. Who the hell are you guys? So
no, and to hit on what he's saying, it goes back to the whole social media, right? And the last 5 to 6 years of that, and how it is, in my opinion, it is a total, I don't even know if this is a word, de-evolution of human interaction.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a real word or not. I just made it up.
It's a great word.
Ping for Mike.
Mm-hmm.
I think that format really is at the heart of one of the inspirations for me, is to take away the me versus you, us versus them aspect of it. We want this to be as interactive as possible.
Yeah.
Eventually, we hope to get to a technological point with the show where we can, you know, be live and be interactive.
Absolutely.
I mean, that would be fantastic. To be interacting with people in real time. But for the time being, it's going to be up to you, the listener, to give us your feedback. Tell us we suck. Tell us we're awesome.
Tell him.
He sucks. Tell us what you want us to talk about. Tell us what you want to be informed about. And you have two people that, we talked about this before. And this isn't to make one person different than the other, but like I have a master's degree, so I've put in a tremendous amount of time in formal education, right?
I have no degree.
But you have real world experience that to me is just greater than or equal to. Then you can take anyone who has a tremendous amount of institutional education, and you're on equal footing, in my opinion, with that. No doubt about it. Anybody, you don't have to have some kind of formal education to have an informed opinion. You've done just as much or more of your own independent learning, right? And that's kind of what we want. That's what we want.
Yeah,
right? We want people to say, "Wow, what are they? They're talking about monetary policy. Well, let me go Google. Let me go find out about monetary policy." And then if you want to ask us questions, we want those questions. No doubt about it. I don't think we can. I don't think the ecosystem of what we're trying to create, could function without interaction. Do you? I don't.
No, absolutely.
I don't see how we can go forward without having people interact with us.
And I think at the end of the day, it's not even this isn't even what does Mike think on that? I mean, who is Mike, right? But what we both have done, we've done a lot of studying of political science, of the economics, and I don't know. I just keep going back to this idea that my life is so much easier because of the philosophies that I've attached myself to, right? Because of the information, my ability to make decisions is immeasurably easier when you have certain fundamental principles that underline my way of thinking. So I think there's a lot of people out there. I hear, and it warms my heart when I hear it from people who maybe disagree with me politically.
But that's what we want.
But they come back and they say, but you made me think about this and maybe look at it in a different way. And look, neither one of us are up here saying that we're right, 100% of the time, or that our way is the best. But I think, we have an opportunity to have a really good discussion, and we want you to be a part of that. So please, once this is up and once this podcast is posted, vlog, I don't know, what do you want to call this? We're going to go with podcast, I guess, right?
We're going to go with podcast, bro.
Okay.
This is
all right, the Mike and Mike Liberty Room podcast.
Hell yeah.
Stephen, our engineer. But yeah, please give us your take, give us your honest feedback. We're not professionals, never done this before.
No.
This bar is really kick-ass. The
real.
whiskey's pretty tasty as well.
Whiskey is real.
Would love to have you guys also be a part of this. We're going to have guests. All are welcome. You don't have to be anybody fancy or in particular, although Mike really likes fancy people.
I like fancy.
That's how he goes.
And, to tie that off, cauterize that part of our segment,
Ow.
We want opposing viewpoints.
Yeah, for sure.
An echo chamber is what has been, in my opinion, so destructive to discourse, interpersonal relationships. I bet every single person, the tens of people that might potentially listen to this, have had at some point in the last, let's just say 4 or 5 years, somebody that they've known maybe for many, many years, whether it's family or friends, that they no longer talk to.
Yeah.
Because of the dynamic of the echo chamber.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, again, one of the things that we really, we've talked about this off the show, and the main thing we want is people that don't agree with what we're saying, people that have an opinion that they have put together just as well as you've put yours and I've put mine together. We want that.
Yes.
We welcome that. As a matter of fact, that is going to be, in our view as co-hosts of the show, probably the most impactful part of this.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And what we do not want to be, you must be a libertarian, in order to succeed in the world. No, that's not it at all. We want to have conversations. We want to look at things from different perspectives. We covet that. I love when someone comes to me and has a unique perspective on something. I'm like, holy cow, man! Anytime someone can show me something I haven't thought of before, man, it's mind blowing, and I love that. And we're pretty open minded individuals here, so.
I think that's an important question that I wanted to start off with. Almost was, are you open to having your mind changed?
Yeah.
Is there how many, all the different things that you love and enjoy, topics, points of view, is there anything that you're not willing to have your mind changed about?
Yeah.
And I would like to think that...
No, we just started with this.
Yeah. Yeah, I would like to think the answer for me is no. Change my mind.
Yeah.
Change my mind. Convince me.
Give me a reason.
Because that's what's missing today, in my viewpoint, is people trying to persuade others to take their point of view. More times than not, it is someone trying to impose their point of view, and that goes back to liberty. That goes back to freedom.
Mm-hmm.
It's the freedom to make your own mistakes. It's the freedom to be persuaded, to allow yourself to be persuaded. Yeah. And I think that if we can accomplish that here, it's going to be a win. And at the minimum, we're going to have a ton of fun. And at the maximum, we're going to change one person's outlook, one person's life.
And it might be one of us.
Whatever.
Oh, look at this. Look at this. Anyway, cheers, my man. Thank you. Liberty Room. We'll see you next time.